acknowledge the land we stand on is the territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit,
the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations,
Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit.
Welcome, everyone. We're so happy that you can join us today for our wonderful panel discussion featuring our award-winning and legendary directors and supporters. Before we begin, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Hannah Johannes, the program manager at the Real World Film Festival. We'd also like to take the time to thank our sponsors, the DGC National, for partnering with Real World in championing and supporting our filmmakers and making this panel happen. Your support is greatly appreciated. Without further ado, I'd like to present to you our lovely guests, starting with Warren P. Sonata, National President of the Directors Guild of Canada. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Next up, we have Winnie Zhong, Director of Nurses, Tokens, and Pretty Hard Cases. Can we give a digital applause? Let's go. Next up, we have the legendary R.T. Thorne, Director of Porter, Utopia Falls, and many more. Whoop, whoop. Yes. And we have the lovely Sharon Lewis, Director of Brown Girl Begins, and many more, and CSA award winner also. Whoop,
And
whoop.
showing at the festival this year.
Exactly. We have her feature film, With Wonder, being showcased at the Real World Film Festival, so check it out. And last but not least, we have Hans Ingalls, who's the Senior Manager at the DGC. Can we give a digital snap fingers and round of applause?
Hello, Hans.
All right. Without further ado, I pass on the mic to you, Warren, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Real World. Before I start, I just want to say on behalf of the Directors Guild of Canada, I would like to extend our absolute deep sympathies and condolences to the family and loved ones of cinematographer Helena Hutchins, who, as many of you know, passed away tragically this week following an on-set incident in New Mexico. We also send our hopes for a full recovery for director Joel Souza. Our thoughts are with everyone affected by this devastating tragedy. And I am speaking for the directors on this panel in saying that on-set safety is a priority for all of us, and no one should get hurt telling stories. But with that, I would like to say hello to the Real World Film Festival people out there. Maybe we can go to the full screen so we can see all our panelists. Thank you. This is one of the perks of being DGC president. I get to spend an amazing afternoon with my dear friends talking about what we do and learning more about you. We only have an hour, so I'll be quick right in. Sharon Lewis, we just spoke about this very topic actually over the phone. So I'm kind of interested in your take right now. Are you on Murdoch still, or are you shooting?
I just finished Hudson and Rex. So I
Hudson
did,
and Rex.
And then I ran to Hudson and Rex.
I think all of us get approached by filmmakers asking, how do you go from indie features, indie documentaries, short films, and break into episodic television? Was there a moment for you where something clicked, Sharon, in getting into episodic?
Yeah, that's a heavy question because I think that I've been knocking on that door for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so my props and my heart and my sadness goes to George Floyd, because I actually think that reckoning shifted something in the industry where I could actually see an actual shift and an actual opening and acceptance that people of color have been knocking on that door for a long time. So a friend of mine, Kim Roberts, an actor who I'm sure some of you worked with, she says it's through the patron saint of George Floyd that shift has happened. So I acknowledge that because I think that I've been doing the work. I did all the things that they told me to do, do some shorts, win some awards, do your feature. Then after you do your feature, that'll open up the episodic world. And it did, in a sense, also because Floyd Kane, who is the creator of Diggstown, was the producer on my feature. So when he got Diggstown, he opened up that door for me as well and gave me an episode of Diggstown. And that helped a lot. And then it was sort of crickets for a year.
Right.
And then
that was a year before the pandemic, right?
Yes.
You did Diggstown pre-pandemic.
I did. Yeah. And then it was sort of quiet. I couldn't get into episodic. The George Floyd thing happened. And then there was a shift and an opening. But what I will say, within that time, I just kept doing the work. I was working in Unscripted. I would see many of you, and I remember seeing Winnie at something, and I was like, how do I get in? How do I do it? And she was like, just keep going. And then, Warren, it's so new for me because I think I literally called you a month ago and said, what does it mean when you're block shooting? Like, they gave me block episodes. Like, I literally, that was that new because Diggstown was one episode. I'd worked in Unscripted.
Right.
And I had these fears that you were directing both scenes at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
In RT, in my case, the answer is yes. You do shoot multiple scenes at the same time. But Sharon, I think you're absolutely right. And when you say shift, did it manifest in the meetings you were taking in terms of the tone or the interest in you? How did it?
Yeah, like I actually got into the room to interview.
Right.
So,
and before that, you were saying it was crickets. It was people just weren't responding to the outreach.
Yeah, I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I had
Brown Girl Begins.
Yeah, and I had directed probably over 100 hours of broadcast television, but it was in Unscripted and it was dramatic recreations. So that wasn't being looked at as experience enough to go into scripted. And then I finally got that Diggstown, and then I got interviews after that. And I think those interviews are what really changed it, in the sense that they were open to looking at experience that they might not normally have seen as relevant to episodic directing. And I think that's the big shift that's happening in the industry, is that if you're going to make it more diverse, you're going to have to look at experience through a lens that's more diverse.
Absolutely. And taking things that might not be specifically 1 hour dramatic television. Listen, I'm a huge fan of Restaurant Makeover. I probably saw all your episodes, but those shows are hard to do, and you learn the techniques that you have to work with the crew, get the shots you need, move on to another location, and all that kind of stuff.
I'll just say this very quickly. I just did a panel with women in the director's chair and Warner Media at Real World, and the question always is like, how do we get in? How do we get in? And I said, do that Christmas movie or do that Unscripted series, because to work with non-actors is a huge learning curve. To work on a really, really short timeline and tight budgets, it's a great, great foundation for when you do get into episodics to move quickly.
Well, thank you for that. And you almost threw directly to Winifred with the question I had. And we're all basically friends and we do communicate. Winnie, I just remember, talking mostly at in-person live events, either festivals or guild events or whatnot. But you have a very specific, unique perspective because you come from the script supervision route and making your way as a top tier episodic director. And maybe you can help some of the real world viewers that are coming in to understand the process of going from one field and getting into directing, and not just getting into directing, but like you're a producer director now on Kings of Napa. I mean, you're working at the highest levels. How are there some nuggets or ideas or themes that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, I think that while I was in script supervising, my goal has always been, and it started off as wanting to be a director. And that was sort of an advice that was given to me, that if I was script supervising, I'm really at the center of the sort of creative triangle on set between the first AD, the director, the DOP, as support staff for the director. And so in a lot of ways, it was film post-secondary, like post film school, and so in a lot of
real world living, like it's like on like real time learning,
and so it took a lot of knowledge from that, and having learned through the eyes of a lot of other directors, seeing what worked, what didn't work, that was really helpful, so that when I was given the opportunity, I kind of ran it like a sprint. It was something that was very familiar with me. I got my opportunity on Coroner, which was a 1 hour. It was in its first season. Everything that they said that is like impossible.
Will never happen. Yeah.
Never happen. You have to do all these other steps. I went straight to 1 hour in its first season. So all those things, and shout out to Adrian Mitchell and Morwen Bremner for giving me that opportunity. But I had that sort of foundation of knowing how the set works and the language you use to lead the set in the storytelling, that made it a lot more comfortable for me.
I guess a lot of questions would be whether you're a script supervisor wanting to direct, or a gaffer wanting to be a DP. What was that? How did you actually make the transition? Because there's the vague sort of, you put in your time, you learned the mechanics of directing, you learned the politics of directing from being 5 feet or now 6 feet away from the director. But was there any specific things you did to put yourself to be successful in getting the coroner job?
Well, I mean, like the advice was given to do a lot of short films. And so I did short films. I shared it with everybody. I did a lot of knocking on the doors, lots of coffee meetings, lots of saying that I'm ready. And until people see the work that you're doing, you're never going to convince people unless they see that you can actually tell a story visually. And so, I kept in touch with Adrienne, and every single time she had a show, I would come calling and say, is this the time? Is this, I was lucky enough to have built lots of good professional relationships with producers in Canada. And so those kind of emails that would come in once the show was greenlit would happen every single time. And finally it I got the yes, but it was that sort of, relationship building.
You literally have to put it out there, right? You can't be forceful to the point where you're annoying, but you have to let people know you are interested in this. The course of your journey is taking you to this place, and whenever an opportunity to direct comes up, please think of me, or I will do whatever it takes to be successful in it. And I know, I have had conversations about the professional director observer and how that role needs to lead to something. And I always, when I talk to emerging and young filmmakers, I always, bring up your story in terms of making the most out of the opportunities that you were given. And talking about opportunities when they were given, I throw now to RT, who is not just a phenomenal director and one of my close friends, but also a kindred spirit, because your journey is very much like my journey. And I guess there will be a lot of filmmakers out there that are coming out of the music video world or the the commercial world, the sort of gun for hire, let's get a small project together and do a bunch of them. And you were a vanguard in music videos at a time when music videos had budgets. What
back in the day?
Yeah. So what did you do, and how did you go from doing these 3-minute clips to shooting Blind Spot and Kung Fu and creating your own series in Utopia Falls? Was there some concrete moments that you knew you had to put in place to get into episodic TV?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff that Winnie and Sharon are talking about, persistence is absolutely kind of needed. You can't take your foot off of the gas in terms of like trying to get those opportunities. So you have to, and you have to also kind of, the industry's tough. Everybody knows that. I mean, I'm sure everybody here who's listening to this panel is like, they want to get in, and we all have those struggles of like trying to impress the people that we want to listen to us, to know that we can do it. I mean, I think that vision is everything as a director, and ultimately every director has a vision. That's all we actually have. If you're lucky, then you have the skills, you have the visual skills, you maybe
organization,
yeah, all of those things. But it starts with a vision. It just starts with somebody who, you can look at the elements in front of you, you can look at what you're supposed to do, and you can figure out a way to tell this story. And ultimately, any director does that. Whether you're doing a music video or a commercial, they're all a storytelling form of entertainment. Reality TV, non-scripted stuff, it's all the same thing. So it's all of us sort of taking these elements, putting them together, shooting the right bits in order to make it come across to the audience, a story. So, I mean, it starts with that. And I think, it's important to remember that you have that as a director, and it's important to know that that's actually the value that you have. You might not have, you might want to do a horror movie, and you don't have any horror in your canon yet, but you know how to tell a story, and you know the element, and if you're worth your stuff. You've done your research. You understand the elements of horror storytelling, so you know what you need to get. And then what you need to do is you have to try to make sure that you can get that stuff. And so, if horror's not coming your way, then maybe try and go shoot something that has some of those elements, so that you can show the people that are judging that based on your stuff. And in my case, towards the end of my music video career, it was when the music video budget started to drop. The bottom fell out of the music industry in terms of how much money they were putting towards videos.
Rest in peace, Much Music, Video Fact.
Yes, Much Fact and Video Fact, and the days of record labels pumping hundreds.
But you did something very strategic with the live, right?
I did. So I mean, one thing that I did is I just realized that I really like to tell stories. I just started looking at my music videos, and I noticed that I was telling a lot of stories in my music videos. I wasn't doing a lot of strictly performance videos. I was doing a lot of storytelling.
So I did country.
Yeah, so that was number one. And then number two, I just realized, what? I really got to make a shift, because the industry is making the shift for me. It's telling me that, I'm going to have to start doing 100 of these things a year to survive. So, Universal Records, I was, very good relations with them. They gave me a call and talked about my old friend, Sean Desmond. Shout out to Sean Desmond back in the day. They were putting out his potential last album. They wanted to do something special with it, and they offered me to do all the videos for the album. And I kind of just said, well, you want to do something special, why don't we do something different? Why are we just going to do 4 videos for this thing? Why don't we do something that could be like an event, and why don't we do a short film? and it'll star Sean,
and his music.
Yeah. And we'll score it with the whole album or as many tracks as we can in this short film. And I was very well received at Much Music. So I said, look, I can take it to Much Music and see if they'll like this idea. And we do a short film and we put together some live aspect of it. Maybe we do some behind the scenes stuff. Maybe we do like a dance competition thing, because he was obviously big in dance, in the dance world. So we created sort of this event, and it had this peripheral programming that was good for Much Music. And it allowed me to do something that was longer form than I had been able to do, and have somebody pay for it as well. That was important. So Universal and Much Music played really well together, and we put together this kind of event for his album Alive, and that allowed me to have a piece then that I could take around to various people, and the wonderful people over at Degrassi were charmed by it, and they gave me my first television shot doing some episodes over there. So shout out to Stephen and Linda. Many of our Canadian people have come through that system. So it was a wonderful system to work through, and I got to work with some great young actors. But that was my way in.
And you could see the DNA from Alive, the Sean Desmond piece, not just with Degrassi, but it right into Make It Pop, and then we did Backstage together, all the elements, and even your Paris show.
Yeah,
I mean, if you took Time Traveler, which is one of your shorts, and Alive, that's basically the show you did in France.
Funny.
But it is about the work. It's about doing good work. And I guess Sharon and Hans, I will get to you in a second, because this all leads into episodic TV with the Guild. But Sharon, what was the one project you did that you think really changed the conversations you were having about television? And it could be about just getting into your restaurant makeover tenure doing television. What was that one project like? RT's Alive.
I think for me, it was Brown Girl Begins. It was the feature film that I did.
Seminal, yeah.
Yeah, it was an Afrofuturist. It was my passion project. It was based on Nello Hopkinson's novel. There was a sort of built-in audience for that, because there was an audience for Nello Hopkinson. And it took me 15 years. Like, I've been pulling that project for 15 years. But when I got the money to do it, it was an Arts Council kind of level of budget. So I scaled down that script. I had two choices. It was give the Arts Council back their money. So, I just cannot make a
Can't do that.
I wasn't going to do that. Yeah. Or, scale down the film. So I really scaled down the film and made an origin story. And then I promoted the hell out of that film.
Yeah.
There were so many film festivals that said no.
Yeah.
And then Black Panther came out, and then people were like, oh, wait, Black people go to sci-fi. Yeah. I'm sure RT, you went through that with Utopia Falls. Like, it's like, what? Black people in sci-fi, we go together? Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
We exist in the future.
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah. And I think that was my big sort of push, is that we exist in the future. Anyway, it did really well in terms of getting really good responses and getting on the radar of people who originally had only seen me in unscripted. Mm-hmm. So they knew me in the unscripted world, but I think it helped to knock down the walls and the doors to get into that. And I just want to give a shout out to Hans, because I will say this for the DGC, for both you, Warren and Hans. The DGC also really helped, because the moment I joined the DGC, and it's funny, people always ask me, did the DGC get you jobs? No. The DGC
that's not our role. We're not a hiring hall. We don't have seniority.
No. And a lot of emerging filmmakers ask me that. But what it did do was it introduced me to people. So after I did Brown Girl Begins, it put me in front of people, other directors, but also in the Meet Your Match stuff, which is fantastic. Out of that, one of my TV series got optioned. And so that, that Take the Shot Productions is now optioned. And that's because of the DGC stuff. So it helped to make me visible, for sure. And I think that's the role that, I mean, besides all the other things that the DGC does, in terms of even being able to call you, Warren, and go, hey, what block shooting was that? Just because as directors, we're often by ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're not getting to like, and even our T and I have tried to connect because it's so vital to talk to other directors, not just about the creative, which I'm thirsty for a panel, please, where we just get to talk about the creative.
Yes.
I would love to just talk about like, when you use the dolly, do you do this? Hey, like it would be so, Ava DuVernay talks about that, and she had a podcast for that where it was just for people of color to not talk about race or getting into the industry, but to talk about the craft. Because that's what RT is saying. That's it. That's why we do this.
Hans, you have the seed for the next NDD Visionaries panel for sure.
Process, directing process.
Process, craft. Can we share craft? What do you do when you've got a dolly and it's not working? I don't know. I want to talk the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
And I think this is all, yes, absolutely. But part of the craft is what you're talking about in terms of actually getting the job. And it's a nice throw to Hans. Hans, maybe we can bring you in now in terms of, so Hans and I go back because I was chair of the NDD and had such a wonderful time with both him and Catherine Middleton, working with directors on the director's file and bringing sort of the NDD back into relevance. Before then, the National Directors Division existed, but now it is a vital tool and apparatus that we use to celebrate our directors, highlight their work, and also have very important strategic meetings about the other side of it, the business side, the contract side. But Hans, you and I have this conversation, so maybe you can talk to the directors out there that are thinking about the Guild, wondering about the Guild. Can you demystify the Directors Guild of Canada to non-DGC members that are directors that are thinking about joining?
2 minutes.
Whoa.
Yeah, you got 2 minutes. 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes to 3.
Well, I mean, I talk to a lot of directors who are interested in joining the Guild, and so I get this question a lot and answer it a lot, and there are lots of different ways of answering it. But I mean, I always think there are 2 ways that I think about the Guild. Obviously, the DGC is a labor union for the industry, much like all the other labor unions, and we do the things that labor unions do. That are extremely important in terms of contract negotiations, making sure that we build a floor below which economic and creative rights will not go. So there's a real support mechanism there, along with health benefits, RSP benefits. And I often say, look, you guys are all independent entrepreneurs. That's what you do. And the Guild, in an interesting way, on that side of things, is almost like it's a leveler. It gives you the support of kind of having a normal life, even though you are independent entrepreneurs. You do have a health plan, you do have an RSP plan, much like other people in other industries. So that's really, really fantastic and incredibly important. The part that I think makes the Guild unique is and thank you very much, Sharon, for the shout out. It is the piece that you're talking about, Warren, the National Directors Division, which really goes takes things on a very different track and a very different level.
On a national level too. It's not just
and it's totally it's national,
across
obviously.
Canada. Yeah.
But it's really about building community amongst our creatives, amongst our directors. And also for our directors within the wider industry, so building the micro and the macro community around our directors. And I mean, you guys have said it. You guys are, you work alone, and you're the only director on a set. And sometimes, if you're working on an indie project, you're the only director, the only DP, the only editor, the only writer, the only producer. So it can be a lonely world. So we really do pride ourselves on building that community and bringing you guys together, so that while there's no way for you not to be competitive, it's a very competitive industry. There are more directors than there are jobs, but we bring you together so that you can be resources for each other, as you've already talked about, which is amazing music to my ears to hear, and to hear, Sharon, you say that some of the programs that we do helped your career along is, I mean, that really is
That's why we designed them that way. Yeah.
That just feeds me to doing more of these things. So we do a lot of things for directors about engagement and advancement, I like to say, which is all about connecting our directors with producers, with showrunners, with agents, with network executives, with each other, so that you do get in front of the people you need to meet. We open the doors, and it's, you know, we don't do more than that. That's our role. We're nobody's agent. But we do have the clout, we do have the connections to put you in front of the people you need to meet.
I will say this also, Hans, and with the caveat that I'm president of the DGC, but I'm also the first one to say it's not going anywhere for the filmmakers out there, and there's not a rush to join. Join when the timing is right for your career.
Totally.
And if you're not a guild member, it doesn't mean you're not a great filmmaker. In fact, so many filmmakers that are not with the DGC are out there doing phenomenal work. It's all about timing, and usually it's synced with timing of when and if you want to get into episodic television, because that's where most of our contracts lie.
Often it is. That's very true, and it's a conversation that I often have as well with filmmakers who are interested in the guild. Is when is the right time to join? And you're right. Typically, the conversations are with filmmakers who have done an indie feature and are really looking to get into the TV episodic industry, and they're trying to navigate that, trying to figure out how to do it. When do I join? It's expensive. You know, what do you do? But you know, the programs that we run, particularly during COVID, interestingly, are constant. They're year round.
Some of them are free to the public.
Some of them, yeah. There are a lot of public events that we do, which are more of the celebratory sessions that we do. The visionaries around the film festivals, the master classes that are year round, and then there are the industry ones, which are just for DGC directors.
So we're a minute or 2 minutes over your 3-minute allotment, but thank you, Hans, for that. We'll circle back with some more questions.
Sure.
I'd like to open it up to audience questions, because this actually flows into the next part of what I really want to know about the three of you. The audience question is, can you talk about how you like to prep for a TV directing job interview? And I guess my next theme, and I'll start off with you, Winnie, is actually getting the job, because it's incredibly hard to do that interview. And maybe you can walk us through your prep for a TV interview, and maybe, if you know, you don't have to name the specific show, but like your process, because I think we're all different.
Right. If I'm interviewing for a job where the project is already streaming or on air, I make it part of my homework to actually see what they're producing, and to be able to talk specifics about their style, the tone of the show, the way it looks, how I can add to it, what my take on it is, and excitement about the project. Those are, like, being a fan of a show is important as a storyteller, because you're the audience member, right? You know what you want to see in the show as an audience member, and that's how sometimes I approach the storytelling as well. It's as a viewer. And
it's always off-putting that first time when you're asked in that interview, what would you bring to the show, especially if it's a long-running show. The first time it was asked to me, it's like, I don't know. I'll do your show. I mean,
it is a lot of prep, right? I don't take it lightly, and I think that's part of how you up your game, is that it's not a meet and greet. It's actually a professional meeting where you show what you can bring to the project.
Now you're talking about shows that are long running, whether it's Murdoch or, you know, but you've done a lot of first year shows, and you are also a producing director on Kings of Napa. Are those interviews different?
Part of it is different in the sense that they just want to see. A lot of times you bring your personality, right? You bring your excitement, you bring your professionalism. You talk about. I talk about how, you know, like when you're doing episodic television, this is where you make your days. That's like really important. That was advice I was given by a director mentor. If you make your days, you can continue to be hired. You make your days and you shoot great work and you have to be vision.
And you have to work with cast
and you have to work with cast. So it's game on top of game on top of game. It really isn't one thing. It isn't really, I made this short it's all about how you navigate as a professional too, right? And so I talk about that. We talk about process. We talk about equipment. Like if I know I'm interviewing for a job, I can talk about specifics. I ask questions about how the floors run. I ask specifics about equipment. I ask specifics on a lot of things, how many days, those right. kind of questions.
How long are the days? Are you doing 10-hour days? Are you doing 11-hour days, 12-hour days? I always find the first couple minutes are so crucial in setting up the tone of the meeting as well, because that's where you're usually they're in LA. So you're talking about your experience in LA, or, those things that, like you say, they have to get to know you. Sharon, do you have anything to add to prepping for an interview for a television show?
Yeah, I think with American shows, I've done a lookbook prior to the interview. Like I've gone and put together something. Even with a new series, I just interviewed for a series. I didn't get it, but I went and did that work and looked at what they had done and put together a lookbook. So I had a little sort of thing to show them my interpretation of what that show would be and where I was coming from. So, and I'm doing that with another American project. I haven't done it with Canadian projects because the turnaround time seems to be much quicker.
Right.
And
they might be a little off put by that kind of work.
I think,
you know what I mean? Like, this is our show. We want you to.
Totally. But to what Winnie was saying is, in those interviews for Murdoch, I picked out particular episodes that I really liked and broke those down. So I was really specific, like in season 8, this episode where you had a noir kind of feel. I think that is a sort of, world. I'm a very cinematic director. I like to work with moody, blah, 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 blah. Here's how I would deal with comedy. So when you're, because Murdoch's either quirky or it's a little bit more serious, it doesn't sort of stray from that much. So I went and I picked specific episodes and spoke about them specifically. And then just to echo what Winnie's saying, ask about how many days, who's on the floor, or, how many cameras, how much room are they looking for in terms of changing up what they need and, or what they want to see. And I find Canadian interviews and American interviews completely different.
Why? What makes them different?
Well, I think the Canadian interviews, especially if there's shows that are on there, they want to know that you're going to make your day, that, you know how to deal with very small budget, because so many Canadian shows are smaller budgets. And not that I've done a ton of American interviews, but the American interviews they really do want to know your vision, and they want to know how you're going to command the set. Like, I feel like the questions they've asked have a lot to do with how am I going to command the set? Right. And I think partly it's being a woman and a woman of color that they're asking these questions, but also just they don't know me. So they're in LA, I'm in Canada. I think they have this idea that we're very, very polite, which we are. Yep. So I think there's just this idea of, do you have the assertiveness, to handle a set? So I find the questions are a lot more around vision and a lot more around handling a set.
How do you prepare yourself to answer a question like that? Because on one hand, you could take it as, it's either insulting or like, really? Yeah. I've worked this hard to become a director and you're wondering how I'm going to, but how do you navigate that?
I'm usually really honest and say that, I'm a tough little something, and it's true. I am, people don't really mess with me, and they don't. It's just, in order for me to have persevered in this industry and to get to where I am, I've had to be a tough little something, but I'm friendly. And as you can see, I do big interviews and I'm smiley and I'm, so, people tend to like me on cast and crews, and that is true. They tend to like me, and I haven't had to deal with that kind of respect issue.
I think that's a great answer. And it's something that a lot of, I'm imagining in the StreamYard audience, there's a lot of new directors, emerging directors that have not done episodic television. but you can bring the experience you've had on your short films and say, hey, my cast love me. They love responding to my adjustments and the ideas that I bring forth and the questions I have. Or my crews, they've worked extra hard for me to get those shots that I needed. RT, you've been on the other side as well, because you've created your own show, Utopia Falls, and I know you're putting together a wicked, awesome slate of tasty treats for us coming up in the next decade. What do you look for in directors that you want to work with? So maybe turn the hat a little bit to give us insight from the executive producer side.
Yeah, I mean, when I interviewed people for Utopia, it wasn't like, we weren't on the air, so it was brand new. But you just look for common ground, common influences. You look to see that this person is a fan of the genre. So we were doing hip hop sci-fi. It's like a well-worn genre. Yeah. But you look for people that either have a real
music experience. Yeah.
Have a good understanding of music and shooting performances and do that kind of stuff. And then you also look for people that the touch points of some science fiction that you love, and that you're talking about the same language, and you're talking about content that has social dialogue, that has social commentary, and you look for people that are interested in that kind of thing, because that's what we're doing. So and above and beyond absolutely everything that Winnie and Sharon are talking about, which is you want somebody who can take control of the floor and has a vision for what you're talking about, but it all comes out in that. Like if, Sharon, if you presented me a lookbook, I'd be like, you're hired. Because clearly you care enough to do this. And then you're speaking about this stuff confidently. Yeah, that's like more than half the battle right there. You just want to know that, as a director, we like to come on the floor and gather these great people together and encourage them and get them to be the best that they can be. And then, we get to take all the accolades after. We get to, what a great performance by someone. I was like, yeah, well, they kind of just did that. I just sat back and watched them, and maybe nudged them a little bit, but that's it. So we get to take that, and it's a beautiful thing. And you just want to know that if you have a show and you hire somebody, that they're going to do that. They're going to take that off your plate and come back with something great. And that's what we're looking for. So it's just confidence and a clear understanding that this person has a vision. They don't just consider this a job, and then if you can speak the same sort of influential language that you guys connect on, that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, and good people, good spirits too, right?
Right.
I think that's something that I definitely looked for with Utopia Falls. Just hiring good souls, people who want to create, who are kind and ambitious and bold, and that's what you want. So,
still holding out for season 2 of Utopia Falls, and maybe maybe Sharon's episodes would have some of that Afrofuturism that she had.
No doubt.
Some questions about director observing. In the questions they said shadowing. I'm trying to expel that word and call it director observing, because it is a director observing another director. You automatically give the respect for the person saying they're a director observing another director. What is a shadow? Anyway, I get it. This is a key component that a lot of emerging filmmakers and filmmakers starting out in episodic TV are trying to get a handle on, getting on a set to observe a veteran director and great directors working. I'm gonna start with Winnie, because we've had many a conversation about this. What are your thoughts about director observing, and how did you navigate it? Because again, I kind of mentioned it earlier. you can't become a professional director observer, that you just, all you do is shadow other directors. It has to lead to something. So what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think you want to go into that position knowing that you're at that level that you can take a job next. Right. I think, we're past the visiting set stage. Right. I think given the fact that it's COVID, people are very concerned about
just the numbers,
extraneous people on there. And so like to bring someone on board, it means like they're ready to take that knowledge. It's not just geeking out about, oh my God, there's a camera, there's this person. It's actually learning the craft, or like, reinforcing the craft that they've been doing independently. I think that's sort of where it's going. I did some professional shadowing or observing with shows that I wanted to direct on. So
Heartland,
those are
right?
No, I observed on the chilling adventures of Sabrina,
right?
Because I wanted to work in the Berlanti camp, which is where I am now. So that's great.
Beautiful British Columbia.
And then I observed on Dark Matter, which is a sci-fi, which is something that I didn't do as much in my professional career as a script supervisor, that I wanted to learn a lot more about. So I did those with that specificity in mind. So I think,
how did you get those placements? Did you just reach out?
Oh, you have to. Now it's like a total rigmarole. But I actually knew the directors that I wanted to observe. So I worked with Amanda Tapping in Budapest, and I loved the way she worked, how organized she was, her demeanor. So I asked if she would be amenable to that. And then, and I'm again friends with Rachel Talalay, and I had general meetings at Warner Brothers, and so when that opportunity arose, I took that. So it's I flew myself to Vancouver. I found couches to stay in. All of that is on my own dime, and that kind of level of commitment is sometimes what you need to do to show that you're committed to the craft and filmmaking.
I gotta echo that too. I gotta echo that because I do feel like you do have to, that level of specificity and determination is the type of thing that you really do have to do. I mean, if you want to be a television director and then specifically in certain shows, you got to know who makes them, who produces them, who directs them, and you gotta work. Work your ass off to try to even get to know some of those people, attend panels where, back in the day, attend panels where they might be, so that you can go with the intent of introducing yourself. Like if an opportunity does arise, fly yourself down on your own dime if you can, if you're able to, and fortunate enough to, that's the type of stuff that shows people that you're committed to this. I did the same. I shadowed on the first season of Blind Spot. I went down to New York and flew myself down and, told a fib about how I was going to be in New York. So
I'm here anyway.
I'm going to be there anyways.
Maybe I can swing by.
Yeah, I'll just swing by. And then I just hung out for a whole month. But, you got to do those things. To let people know that you're actually dedicated to it.
Sharon, anything to add on observing other directors?
Yeah, I'll just say I did the same thing. I mean, I flew myself. I met Tracy Deer at a DGC event, and I went down and I shadowed her, and then I shadowed Gail Harvey on Private Eyes, all at my own expense. So I agree with all of that. But I also think what was really telling for me is that I didn't necessarily learn much about my craft, because TV goes so quickly. But what I did learn was a lot about the politics and how the politics work on set. So coming from an actor background, I didn't really have that insight because, they treat actors, they treat us with kid gloves. So we don't really know what's happening behind the scenes as part of the crew. So that was fantastic to see all that sort of politics that goes on between, you know, the crew, the showrunner, the broadcaster, to be a part of all of those meetings was fantastic for when I went into my own prep.
I think also as a director, you need to be humble when you do observe, and it's not just emerging directors. I observed Tim Southam on Lock and Key because I wanted to see what $10 million an episode looks like, and to see Roy Shane's sets. Roy Shane, an amazing DGC production designer, he just did Foundation, right? So I wanted to see that side of things. But I think you're absolutely right, Sharon. It's not like you're there to really pick up lenses, and I think you can learn a lot by watching other directors block. I appreciated that, and I learned a ton watching Tim do that. But the political world of episodic TV is unlike your indie film world. It's completely different. It's much aligned to the commercial world, where you have an agency and a client, and you turn to them and say, do you like that shot of the cereal box? Would you like me to shoot that again? Hans, quickly, I know we have something brewing with the very first official DGC Director Observer Program. Anything to add? I don't know if we're ready to say anything yet, but it is something that is a priority for us.
Yeah, it's a huge priority for the National Directors Division, and we're doing it. We're trying to do it properly, which is why we're sort of taking our time and being thoughtful about it. We are very interested in having directors compensated. We're very interested in having those who are observing be respected on set, so that the crew knows that they're there. They know that they're directors. It isn't just somebody's cousin who's sitting behind the director. These are real directors with real opportunities, and spending some time thinking about who those directors are and on which shows they're going to be. We've got some partnerships happening right now with some organizations. So we're running some pilot observing programs as we speak, and developing a broader shadowing or observing program that will be available to all producers and networks that will help facilitate. So there's a lot more on that front coming. But I would quickly just echo what RT was saying, and I think it's sort of a broader thing too, is know the industry. If you want to get into episodic television, watch Canadian episodic television.
Yeah.
And watch the credits. Figure out who directed it, who designed it. Watch all their other shows, so that when you're actually at a party, at a meeting, at a film festival, at a panel, and you've just watched all of RT's episodes of Utopia Falls or whatever it is, you can go up to him and say, man, that shot in episode 3 where this and that happens was incredible.
Well, RT only did episode 1, 2, 9, and 8. So you'd have to attribute Mel or whoever did episode 3.
I do think I know all of your guys' shots, though.
There you go. I think you're absolutely right, Hans. And it's not just through the Guild that you can find yourself opportunities to get on sets watching other directors. Again, I absolutely agree with Winnie. It's harder now with COVID. But I wouldn't say it's the be-all, end-all. There's a question about film school. Is it essential to go to a film school in order to become a successful director? I'll quickly answer this myself. I failed Ryerson Film School twice. The first time marginally, the second time spectacularly. I don't think any of us have ever been asked to show a diploma to get a job. So, but what I do appreciate about my very short time at Ryerson is I'm lifelong friends with the people I went to school with, and they continue to be my industry peers, like Jeremy Benning, who is the DP of Expanse, and Luc Montpellier. These people that you meet at film school become the fabric of your relationships that are out there. I guess I'm cognizant of time. We have 6 minutes left. Just sort of a speed round with our 3 directors, because I know there are filmmakers out there that are still stumped about getting into episodic TV. They've done a phenomenal short film or a kick-ass indie movie. What do you think are the 3 top elements one should be working on to getting into episodic TV? And I'll start by, and it doesn't have to be 3. I'm just saying that as a topic setter. Whenever I have coffee or virtual coffees with filmmakers and they ask that question, I always go, well, what have you done? What is the work? It always goes back to the work. And the example I give is Jared Kiso, who was a phenomenal actor, but maybe not getting the lead roles that he wanted, was probably getting frustrated that he wasn't getting the series he wanted, started putting out these little YouTube clips of these asinine characters that were so wholly realized that they were hilarious. Letterkenny Problems on YouTube, these short little, and you couldn't get more low budget than this. It's a guy standing in front of a barn saying idiotic things. Became the first 40 episode half-hour TV order in the history of Canadian television because they put out these little YouTube clips. And it's the work. It really goes back to what have you created? What will get people interested in what you have to say about the world? So that's kind of where I start the conversation off with emerging filmmakers. Any of you want to jump in?
Yeah, and I think even if you get the hit, whatever, you can't just ride that. I think you have to Tokens was very successful, but I have to create more things. And that specificity or creative juice or storytelling is the next, that's sort of, I'm not going to ride that as my be all and end all and have to create something new.
Sharon?
I guess I would just say, stay connected to the passion. Because oftentimes when we're hustling and we're on, I got to get the next job, I got to get an agent, now I got to go to the States. I love storytelling. And I'm so excited about having cinematic tools to tell a story. It's amazing to me that I get to do this. So when I lose that and I start to just God, I gotta hustle, I lose the juice to do it, because what really feeds me is to tell beautiful, engaging, entertaining stories. And when I stay connected to that's why I got into this business, I find the juice and I find the wherewithal to take the next step and the next step and the next step, including if it's just to shoot a little short on my phone, if it's just to, because I'm going to hone my craft, as long as I'm staying connected to, we tell stories for a living. It's amazing.
Me and my wife are going to do a podcast next of something I've wanted to tell for so long called Hot Like Wasabi, because we can just sit down and do it in our bedroom sort of thing.
Yeah.
RT, what is your wisdom to someone wanting to get into episodic TV? Is there something specific that you can kind of glean from your experience?
I just think, look, be strategic. Aim at something and develop a strategy, what you're aiming for, and then put in the work to create it. It's like Sharon saying, you can shoot anything on anything now, you can almost shoot. Yeah.
4K.
Exactly. So, it's just, I think use what you got, but if what you got was 7 years ago, then you better come up with something new. And collaborate with peers. I think it's this industry is all about connections and about relationships and about teamwork, right? So while you're sitting there trying to get into that sci-fi series that you see, there's probably a bunch of actors who also want to do some sci-fi stuff
that are on the series already.
A lot of young or old cinematographers that are trying to reinvent themselves. So it is about community. It is about connecting with some of these people that you see out there. So, educate yourself on their community, see who's out there trying to do stuff, communicate with them, tell them what you're willing to do, and collaborate on things. Because then their network becomes your network, and now you all have some work to be able to show. And that's, and like I said, if you're strategic and you're kind of aiming at something, now you can build something together and you can aim at that and then go at those people. I think that's the best way to go about it. And listen, don't be disappointed if it doesn't happen for you. That shot that you did, you got to put something together for that. You just got to keep going and take another shot somewhere else. But now you have something to do it with.
failure means you're trying, right? And we all have to keep trying. We have a question that you just basically answered. If you don't have connections like Winnie did, would DGC membership help get an observer opportunity? Let's end with this, and I'll riff on what RT just said. And again, with the caveat that I'm the president of the DGC, and I'll be the first one to say, being part of the DGC doesn't mean anything other than you have a contract and you have health and welfare benefits, and you have an organization fighting for those very specific things. If you're out there creating stuff right now, I think RT is absolutely right. It's your group, your peer group. Because I look at this screen, this is my peer group. We all came up together in some way or fashion. And we constantly, like Sharon will call me, or I'll call Winnie, or I constantly call RT or text him. It's like, shit, man, what should I do about this? But this is our group. Your group will be younger, and you'll feel like you're on the outside looking, the outside looking in, trying to get into there. But slowly but surely, those huge white trucks with all the gear and all the equipment and the base camps and the circuses, it will slowly become your trucks. And the C-stand that you use on your short film is the exact same C-stand that Guillermo del Toro uses on his $150 million movie. It's the same stuff. It's about relationships. And I thank all four of you for the relationships that I have with you. I thank Real World Film Festival for the relationships that you cultivate with panels like this and all the... I won a Trailblazer Award back in the day. And those types of things are important for young filmmakers to get a little bit of fire to move forward. So please, everybody out there, look at the filmmakers on this panel, follow them, watch their episodes of TV if you're so lucky to observe them on set because you're ready to make that jump into episodic television. Make sure you know their canon because their work is phenomenal. And anything else, Winnie? One last thought?
No, that's great. I think that's great. It's great to, like we always bump when we used to do live events, I would like beeline to you or there are people that you beeline to, and that's your community.
Yeah. Hans, last thought?
Really, I mean, just be present. Be present.
Show up.
In the moment, show up, know what's happening in the world and in the industry. Read Playback Magazine, all those kinds of strange things. Know what's going on, and it'll just be in your mind at the moment that you need it.
And slowly you will be featured in Playback Magazine.
Absolutely.
That's how it works. RT?
Just don't be afraid to also, I know this industry is sometimes, you can feel like you're an outsider. You can feel like you don't know if you should talk to. But listen, if you see any, I'll speak for me. I won't throw you guys into it, but I'm sure everybody on this panel as well. If you see us, I mean, we're on social media as well.
Come say hi.
Say hey. Say what's up. Ask us questions. It's all good. We're, everybody here has been in your shoes and is still in your shoes, trying to make our different moves as well. So, and we're a community. So, reach out if you got questions and you want to know. We might not be able to solve all your problems. That's true.
We might not get back to you right away.
That's true too.
Yeah.
But that said, don't be afraid to reach out, and we'll be honest with you. I mean, that's the best we can do. So we'll tell you what we feel, but yeah, don't be afraid to reach out.
Sharon?
Well, you got two choices: give up or persevere. So pick one.
There you go.
Sharon.
Keep moving forward. We're all in this together. Have each other's backs. Be safe during this time. Be safe on set specifically. Much love for all of you, and much love to Real World Film Festival. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Nice to see you.
Great to see everyone.
See you.
Take care, y'all.